helps if I'm not muted. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for our first series in the Working with the Textperts webinars, Voice Assistance and Dictation Features for Students with Vision Loss. We're really excited to be able to provide this for you via Zoom, even though we really do prefer that face-to-face connection for our Working with the Experts workshops. But we're able to reach more people this way, which is really, really great. And we've never really recorded any of our Working with the Experts stuff before. So I think this is a great opportunity for all of us. We have 98 participants right now, and that's awesome. We had 53 that were registered for face-to-face. So I'm glad we could essentially almost double our outreach. Our presenters today are from the Lighthouse of the Palm Beaches, but I'm going to let them talk about their certifications, credentials, and their experience. Diane, if you'd like to start.
Well, hello, everyone. This is Diane Salina. I began at the Lighthouse over 25 years ago. Please don't do the math. I started as a social worker and a counselor. Then I did a work-study program to get my master's at FSU. Yay! And I had the credentials to become a rehabilitation teacher, and then later got certified as a certified rehabilitation therapist. Later, noticing the demand for technology training, I studied to become a CADIS, which is a Certified Assistive Technology Instructional Specialist. We love our alphabet soup with ACVREP. So I'm so glad that they're allowing us to get CEUs, particularly in these times. So many workshops and conferences are being canceled. So it's a good thing. Glad to see so many participants here today. My current position at the Lighthouse is an itinerant CVRT and CADIS. I cover a 5-county area in Southeast Florida. But currently, with our situation, I'm solely providing remote training. Rachel?
Thank you, Diane. So I also work at the Lighthouse for the Blind of the Palm Beaches, and I'm the Technology and Vocational Coordinator at our Lighthouse. I also work for UMass Boston, University of Massachusetts, Boston, and I'm the Program Coordinator for the AT program, which I'm very excited. We have some students from that program here in the room with us. I am a certified rehab counselor, and I started back in the late 90s and into the early 2000s working as a VR counselor with the Division of Blind Services here in Florida, and then really fell in love with what technology could do for people's independence. And the rest is history. I've been really working with assistive technology primarily since that time. I started with the Lighthouse in 2003. We were at a different building, but outside of a few years where our agency closed and still continuing to work, I've been with them ever since. And I think that covers it. Going to hand it back over to you. And I just want to remind everyone, if you haven't completed the survey, please do so. It's very short. And we're going to just look at the results to see who uses which the voice assistants.
Great, thank you so much. If you could advance the slide, please.
Oh, and I don't think I said I am a CADIS. I was on the SME committee to develop the CADIS certification. And there's a few different university programs to help prepare if anyone's considering pursuing CADIS certification. One thing I want to just clarify, if anyone's interested in our program at UMass Boston, please contact me. My email address is there. And I can also share my university address if that helps. But when you attend one of the university programs, you're not a CADIS at the end, even though some of the programs have a certificate. Especially if you already have a master's, you may be pursuing a certificate of completion that prepares you for the CADIS certification eligibility through ACVREP. So you do have to certify through them. Just a clarification I wanted to make. Thank you for posting that survey. And Andrea, I'm going to turn it back over to you for real now.
Super, thank you. Yes, we have a wealth of knowledge, as you just heard here on this webinar, so we're really excited to bring these presenters to you. If you could advance the slide, please. Just a quick reminder about our agenda today from 10 to 11:30. We will be discussing voice assistance and dictation features for students with vision loss. And then at 11:30, we're going to take a quick break. Then at 11:30, we're going to just open the room up for some open discussion. If you have any questions about teaching remotely, anything that's on your mind about teaching in today's or the current times, please stick around for that. We will do a raffle before that though. So stick around for the raffle too. You'll want to win. Sherry's going to be our raffle queen, I guess is what we've decided to call it. All right, moving on. Just real quick about the Florida Instructional Materials Center for the Visually Impaired. That's where I'm from if you're not familiar with us, but there's lots of TVIs on here, so they are familiar with our services. But for those that are not, we are a statewide resource center and we are funded by the Florida Department of Education. We are considered a discretionary project from BEAS, the Bureau of Exceptional Education Student Services. We are responsible for providing accessible instructional materials. That includes Braille, large print, digital, to students who are registered with us pre-K through 12th grade, public and private schools. We're also a ex officio trustee for American Printing House for the Blind, meaning we provide curriculum materials from APH to school districts at no cost. We also provide professional development, which you are participating in today, local and statewide workshops, working with the experts, webinars, and we also provide quality programs for students with visual impairments free to Florida school districts. So if you're interested in learning more about that, email Sherry Hart, who is my co-host today. And thank you all my FIMC staff and friends that are on here today. They're here to support me as well and support all of you all out there. So thanks for our whole team being here. We also have student events for Florida Regional Braille Challenges, a Florida Cane Quest, and Florida Festival of Families. And also when I was talking about Kathy Krumplesky earlier, who not very many people see because she is way deep into proofreading Braille FSAs and FSAAs. So the accessibility of those tests are very important to us, and Kathy K is heavily involved in that. We also coordinate volunteer services for Braille production for school districts using the Visual Aid Volunteers of Florida. If you have any questions about our services, our contact information is at the end of this presentation, so feel free to reach out to us at any time.
And the opening code is?
Oh, I was going to do that on the next slide.
Oh,
or the other slide, sorry.
Okay. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Some of our content's missing, but that's okay. There it is. It's got animation. So if you want to contribute to the conversation, lots of questions about if your mic is muted, it is, and it will be for the duration of the presentation until we open up for Q&A. We can unmute people one person at a time. You can use the raise hand feature. So you can either use that at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar by clicking it, or you can use the shortcut keys Alt-Y. And as always, you can use the chat box. That's open the whole time. Just be sure you're typing to all panelists and attendees. Rachel, you raised your hand. So that's how you can contribute to the conversation. Thank you. Contribute to the conversation. Okay, so handouts and Inservice. Handouts are available on our website, so you can go ahead and grab those. They're in accessible PDF form at FIMC-VI.org/training/webinars. And for CEUs, you must complete the survey at the end. You will need the opening and closing code. So the magic code for today is Amazon. AMAZON, Amazon. That is our opening code, and of course the closing code will be given at the end. There is a link for the survey here, but it's also at the end of the PowerPoint. You will also receive an email at the end of the day with a link to the survey. So you have multiple ways of accessing that survey link, and CEUs are provided by the Florida Instructional Materials Center, so that's us. So if you have any questions, you email me, Andrea Wallace, awallace@fimcvi.org. And I'll hand it over to Rachel.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. So before we switch to Diane, I just wanted to go through just a variety of some of the technologies that you may use. Of course, voice assistants can be used by anyone, but sometimes they're a necessity to use voice control. So I just wanted to very quickly, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but just go through some of the different alternatives to using a mouse or keyboard. And then we'll switch over to Diane, and she's going to go into talking about various voice assistants. So alternative input options, there's options, of course, for various different, various keyboards, ergonomic keyboards, large print keyboards. You could, of course, many of you know there's different types of overlays or stickers that you could add to keyboards if you have students who have issues with spills or not breaking things. There's different devices you could put on keyboards or purchase special keyboards where they're a bit more sturdy than the average keyboard. Various types of mice. I'm using, I don't think I could hold it up, but I'm using a trackball mouse that I'll hold up it's just a little ball that goes on the top of my mouse. And for me, it's just a bit more ergonomic. It helps it, so since I'm on the computer all day long, even though I use mostly keyboard commands, when I do have to use the mouse, it just helps relieve some of that stress on your wrist. And there are big track mouses. There's many different options. So you don't always have to stick to just standard mice and keyboard. If a student is having difficulty using a standard mouse, there's many options. I have a link here. I believe this is to RJ Cooper's switches. There's AbleNet has a number of switches. There's a number of companies that you could go to explore various types of switches. And Switch typically has one button, but sometimes you could use devices where you could use multiple switches to do various functions, and they could connect either wired or wireless using Bluetooth or using other technologies. And there's many other options. So just keep those in mind if you have students who need these devices. And often I would recommend an assessment with an AT specialist or CADIS to make sure that the student has what they need and that, am I cutting out? Andrea, are you able to hear me okay? I saw that someone said that the audio was cutting out.
I can hear you.
Okay. So just keep that in mind, but it all comes back to the assessment. I have a link here from Jan. It's a few years old, but it's a showcase of various alternatives to mice. It's about 5 minutes. I highly recommend it. It's a good overview of just what's out there. Sticky keys is a feature that's built into pretty much every modern operating system. On a Windows computer or Mac, you could use the Shift key 5 times if that's enabled to enable sticky keys. And what that lets you do is if a student needed to hold down Control, but they couldn't press 2 keys at the same time in the proper way, holding down the Control and tapping the other key, they could hit Control once and then hit the other key in that command. So it gives them a way, and you could actually lock multiple modifier keys at the same time. So it helps someone who either is a one-handed typist or perhaps only has a few fingers on each hand, that it still enables them to use the keyboard. And sometimes if someone needs these technologies, you may want to look at different options. So they have, maybe they have their primary mode of input, but they may need a secondary mode of input using either speech recognition or dictation as well. So even though Diane's going to focus on voice assistants, a lot of this same technology is built into most of these operating systems that we use: Windows, macOS, Chrome, even Linux. So, and also Android and iOS. And there's also various stands to hold devices. So if you have a student in a wheelchair or if they're unable to hold a device in their hand, there's various different platforms and options. I'm not going to go into those because that's a whole several tape presentation in and of itself, but there's many different options. And then of course, voice assistants, which we're going to focus on. So Amazon Echo, Google Home Pod, I believe, right, Diane? Siri, OK Google, or the Google Voice Assistant, Cortana, and there's so many others. And then, of course, built-in dictation features, which, again, most of the major operating systems have these built-in dictation features. So you're able to just type anywhere where you would have an edit box to type. If you could use the keyboard on most operating systems, you would also be able to dictate text. And that's very simple dictation, not voice trained dictation. Then it gets into the most complicated, which would be advanced voice or speech recognition options that require someone to do some voice training, and they're able to improve based on that person's voice. The longer someone uses that technology, the better it gets. So with that, I hope that gives just a progression of some different options. And it doesn't mean that one person would be just using one or another. They could be using some of these together. And Diane, take it away. We're going to talk about voice assistants. And you know what, before you do, I'm going to share the results of the survey. So I take that back. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to bring this up. Okay. Let me come back so I could share that with everyone. We're going to see the results of the survey.
Do we need a drum roll?
A drum roll. Okay. So it looks like we had 65 responses. Amazon Echo, Alexa, we had 43 people. So that's a little over 66%. And remember, some of you may have answered, that you use more than one of these. Hopefully you weren't limited to just one. Google Home or Google Voice Assistant, 18, and that's 27.7%. I hope after this that changes, at least especially for those of you who have Android or Chromebooks, because that's built in. Apple HomePod and or Siri, it looks like there were 43, and that's 66%. Cortana, 8%. I'm sorry, 8 people, 12.3%. I'm not surprised about that, but it does work. I think there's some better options out there, in my opinion. Siri was 2, 3.1%. So not too many. It looks like we may have had that duplicated. So I'm going to add those 2 to 43. We'll make that 45. One person said I've not used a voice assistant before. So well, hopefully Diane's going to change that today. And none yet, so that another 1. And then Apple VoiceOver, iPhone, and Mac laptop, 1. So, I think those were people that may have just added those in. Okay, so we have a few novices, Diane.
Well, we're going to have to fix that. Thanks for sharing the results of that survey, and thanks for everyone who participated. And I believe you can still go back if you didn't have a chance to answer those questions. So before we get any further started, I suggest you turn off your microphone to any of your nearby voice assistants so that in our discussion, I'm not setting off your gadgets. Even on your telephone, disabled Hey Siri in case she wants to answer you when you least expect it. Next slide, please. Oh, we may be waking, there you go. We might be waking up the devices in earshot. So take care of that sooner rather than later. So let's get acquainted with the voice assistants. Echo is often called Alexa. It's an Amazon product with many versions, including some with video. Usually the higher priced models have very good audio quality. So if you're, addicted to your stereo, listen, you have those big fancy speakers, you can do that with some of the higher end Echo products. We nickname them Alexa, and we're going to go over that a little bit later, but the dots and pods and the lower end things are very affordable. Another voice assistant is the Google Home, including the Dot and other versions. And don't forget Hey Google on smart devices. Rachel referred to that a moment ago. So if you have an Android phone or any smart device, you can activate it so that you don't even have to touch the phone or press the home button or hit the little microphone. It can be totally voice command. And
can I add?
There's the Apple Home.
Can I add one quick
please.
thing? So just with
Sure.
you could have some fun with Hey Google. You could even try saying Hey Noodle or some other variations. I won't go into all of them, but there's some funny variations that you could say and they will work.
Thanks, Rachel. She always has some critical input, so jump in with your observations as we go. And of course, Apple doesn't want to be left out. They created the HomePod, and they have so much popularity with Siri, teaching the iPhone to many of my participants. They get real frustrated on how Siri sometimes doesn't cooperate, and a lot of times it's just learning how to ask the questions properly. There's many others, including Bixby, Brianna, Callow, Cortana. We're going to be discussing some of these further in this workshop. So, setting up your voice assistant. We're not going to be teaching you that today, but because it varies by device. It includes downloading an app, connecting to Wi-Fi, and signing in with a username and password. And here's the good news. If you have little young people who don't have a smartphone, I know they're out there somewhere, or some of my seniors that I work with haven't bought into having a smart device, they can still use the voice assistant. It just has to be set up with a smart device. I had a participant who's a Windows computer with JAWS, and he uses Amazon all the time, so he has a username and password. I went with my smart device, connected his Echo by logging into his Amazon account and then logging out because I wanted to use my own Amazon account for my devices. So the smart device doesn't need to be in proximity of the voice assistant. And settings can be personalized to recognize a person's voice, their home location, payment methods, privacy preferences, and other preferences. I have a participant who, it's a husband and wife. She does a lot of her shopping on Amazon with her credit card, and she doesn't want him to be able to go in and buy what he wants on her credit card. So she has it, voice specific. It won't buy anything if he orders it. So you can set up the settings as simply or as complicated as you prefer. All right, so these devices can be make phone calls. You can say the wake up word. Echo can be either called Echo or Alexa. I don't believe they take any other names. We at the Lighthouse, we have 2 Echo devices in close proximity, one in our computer lab and one in our teaching kitchen. And one device is called Echo and the other is Alexa, so they don't answer questions for the wrong participant. So you can, to make a phone call, you would just say the wake up word, Alexa, call Tom Terrific. The device might ask if you want to call a cell phone or the home phone, and it depends on how the contact is set up in your contacts. If the number's not in your contacts, you can ask your device to dial digit by digit. So, Alexa, call 586 or call 561-586-5600 to call the Lighthouse. The phone call would be like handling it through a speakerphone. So, lots of us use our speakerphone feature frequently so we can do things, hands-free of the phone. The voice assistants will not dial 911 emergency calls. And I've had some senior participants go around that. A lot of them have the home alert, medic alert buttons, but if they don't, they can use their home assistant to call a neighbor, a friend, a relative who can then call 911 if that's indicated. Rachel, there you go. All right, so common tasks the voice assistants can do. Play radio stations. I don't know the last time I turned on my home stereo. I play, holiday music, or, you can ask for your favorite radio station. International, I have people who, listen to their hometown and, Europe or wherever. So it's fascinating how you can stay connected through your voice assistant to, the radio. Podcasts are very popular. There's so many. I'm not even going to attempt to name, these are a few of my favorite. I like Apple Viz, where Apple products are reviewed and discussed. NPR News, Dateline. Now you see that I like those murder mysteries. I'll play a Dateline episode while I'm making dinner or something in the kitchen. Keep me company. They can also...
Diane, I just wanted to add one thing on podcasts, and Andrea, I don't think you would mind, but we can share at the end, maybe either in the email or just at the end as a resource. Andrea and I have done a couple presentations where we created a Google Doc where people have actively shared some of their favorite podcasts or ways to just for continuing education, and personal learning networks. So we can share that with you. It's a working live document, so you're welcome to add. I think that might be helpful because that has a long list of these podcasts.
That's a fabulous resource that I wasn't even aware of. So I'm glad to share and to be shared. We can the voice assistants can play Audible books. So if you don't have a paid Audible account, like I don't, you can just ask for the free Audible books and you'd be surprised what's in their library. And you can play music, not just radio stations, but free music or subscription services like Pandora, Apple Music, YouTube, and so on. Again, radio's become a little bit out of style maybe, but so, music is all there. And then there's other variables on how each device handles these and other tasks. And the last point on this slide is that it takes practice to learn how to ask it to perform certain desired tasks. Practice, practice, practice. Sometimes you have to change the phrasing, just be creative in how you talk to these devices, because they, you need to talk to them so that they understand what you want to do. It'll probably mistalk to me today during the presentation. So again, it's all practice. Next. All right, smart home devices. Voice assistants are very helpful if you have any devices. I have a Roomba. It can start, stop, and schedule vacuuming around my home, which is fabulous. There's so many smart devices coming out every day, from smart light bulbs, thermostats, door locks, small appliances like the Instapot, large appliances, washers, dryers, stoves, ovens, refrigerators. I mean, our houses are getting so smart, and you can handle all of this using your voice assistant. Then we get to shopping. Amazon was brilliant when they created the Echo because it makes ordering so easy. Your credit card's part of your Amazon account, and you just have to talk to your device and voila, things appear on your doorstep. So, so many other online retailers have, jumped onto this bandwagon, and it's not just through Amazon Echo, the Google products, the others can also do online shopping very successfully and very easily. Again, it takes practice. Hopefully you don't get, 15 of the same product because you were practicing, but if it's non-perishable, then you'll be ready for the next quarantine. Other useful tasks. All right, let's go ahead and list them all here. There are reminders, timers, alarms, and calendars. These are similar but different. So, for example, I would set a reminder to call Susie on Saturday at 10 o'clock because it's her birthday. I would set a timer to take her birthday cake out of the oven in 40 minutes. I would set an alarm for 9 a.m. so that I'll be awake to call her at 10. And then I would add Susie's birthday to my calendar so I'll remember it next year and forever. So again, it's just getting into the habit of using these services, I guess. Remind Me is one of my favorite ones. timers. I can't do anything around my house without a timer. I have to time my laundry, so I remember to move it from the washer to the dryer, or else it'll sit there for a day or two. We, the voice assistants are just so helpful in all of these, and I hope you take advantage of them.
Diane, you have a couple of cute graphics on there. Do you want to talk about those? And
Okay.
then I have, and also if you could share how you help students learn the difference between these different features.
All right. Well, the slide has a graphic of an elephant holding a don't forget sign, because I think many of us need that gentle reminder, like an elephant reminding us to do something. And then there's an old-fashioned alarm clock that with the two little bells. Remember when, I don't know, when I was a kid, that's how I had to wake up in the morning. So your voice assistant could be set to pleasant music, or something loud and rowdy to wake you up if that's what you need. But when I'm teaching somebody how to use these different tasks, I'll illustrate it in, well, you don't want to be reminded. In a reminder, you have to say a day and a time to be reminded, because the device won't know when to remind you. So you'll say, remind me tomorrow at 10 a.m. to call Susie for her birthday. You could say, remind me next Thursday to call the dentist to change my dental appointment. Timers are pretty self-explanatory, whether it's for household chores or tasks, but you wouldn't want a reminder to take the cake out of the oven. But you could name a timer. You could say, this is the cake timer, this is a timer for the sprinkler system, this is a timer for 15 minutes so the kids get their reading done. So you could have timers named. And then calendars, you can do all of your calendar input by voice command. On my iPhone, I'll say, Siri, schedule a lesson with Tom Terrific every Thursday at 2 p.m. So that's a repetitive appointment. If I needed a reminder, I would then put that in reminders. Remind me every Thursday at 1:45 that I have a lesson with Tom Terrific. So those are some examples how these are similar and different, and hopefully you'll start using them, because I think our parents and grandparents used to tie a string around their finger, and I never knew what that was supposed to do, but maybe it helped them remember. All right, cooking assistant. They really don't cook for you.
The mic's back on.
All right. So, but they will do a recipe search, and that's what we're going to demonstrate now. You can ask the device to find a recipe for a particular food. I'll demonstrate now how it'll go over the ingredients, the cooking steps. It can pause for you to perform the task or gather the ingredients. So let me go ahead and get started. Alexa, find me a recipe for brownies.
Okay, for brownies, I recommend classic brownies. 45 minutes to make. Serves 12. What would you like? Start recipe. Send it to your phone, or here next recipe.
Start recipe.
Classic brownies from Side Chef. There are 8 ingredients. Would you like to gather ingredients, or hear the instructions?
Gather ingredients.
Step 1. Preheat oven to 320 degrees Fahrenheit, 160 degrees Celsius. When you're ready, say repeat, or next step.
Next step. Notice she didn't hear me, and I'm calling her she because it's a female voice. When it's listening, the device, I won't say her name, has a blue ring around it. So your visually impaired or blind participant might not be able to see that. So the wake up word would help her continue. Now, because I paused to have this conversation, she might not remember where we are. So let's check that. Alexa, continue.
Step 2. Fill a saucepan with a few inches of water and bring to a simmer.
but I didn't want the steps. I wanted the ingredients to the recipe. So let me start over. Alexa, find me a recipe for brownies.
Okay, for brownies, I recommend classic brownies. 45 minutes to make. Serves 12. What would you like? Start recipe. Send it to your phone? Or here next recipe.
Start recipe.
Classic brownies from Side Chef. There are 8 ingredients. Would you like to gather ingredients? Or hear the instructions?
Gather ingredients.
Step 1. Preheat oven to 320 degrees Fahrenheit, 160 degrees Celsius. When you're ready, say repeat or next step.
Okay, she's not participating well. She wants to do the next step. I did
And
say
sometimes technology doesn't respond as we want. So sometimes you have to try saying things in a different way.
and I think she just wants to do this because I'm being recorded on this webinar. So let's move on to, and also that recipe, I wanted to point out, it was a really weird setting at 320 degrees. I don't think I've ever used my oven at 320 degrees. So if I was really going to make these brownies, I would probably ask for a different recipe. So, hey Google, give me a recipe for simple chicken salad.
Got it. I've got a recipe called Basic Chicken Salad from All Recipes. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Great. Would you like to start with ingredients or instructions?
Ingredients.
There are 6 ingredients. You can ask for the next ingredient or skip to the instructions. The first ingredient is 1/2 cup mayonnaise.
Next. Notice it didn't hear me. I also have the setting so it makes a tone when it's listening and a tone when it's done listening. So I'm going to say, hey Google, next ingredient.
The second ingredient is 1 tablespoon lemon juice.
Hey Google, next ingredient.
1/4 teaspoon ground black pepper.
Hey Google, next ingredient.
2 cups chopped cooked chicken meat.
Hey Google, next ingredient.
1/2 cup blanched slivered almonds.
Hey Google, next ingredient.
1 stalk celery, chopped. That's it. Let me know when you're ready to start.
Okay, we're not going to continue with this recipe, but you'd see how it, would give you time to either gather the ingredients, measure the ingredients, chop the ingredients, or whatever, and then you just have to wake up the device and ask for the next step. Don't forget to set the timer for the brownies if you're baking them. Go ahead, Rachel.
I'm not following all the questions, and we will go back and take a look at some of those questions. But there's one that Sherry asked, does anyone know if the voice assistant can import, oh, sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. Can you, Mara, sorry, can you ask them to use a specific recipe? It's going so fast that I'm losing it. Hold on. It was basically asking, can you ask for a specific recipe or a favorite recipe in an app?
I believe you can. I believe the Google device went to All Recipes. That happens to be one of my favorite accessible recipe apps on my phone. You could ask for, let's say, the Campbell's soup recipe for green bean bake. The best way to find out if it'll give you a recipe, ask for it. So practice, practice, practice. So I
have a follow-up question, Diane.
Okay.
I was wondering say there are cooking directions on the back of something like a Tyson chicken nugget box. Can it look up those specific cooking directions for specific items?
I think you could probably pull up Tyson.com, pull it up on your computer and have your screen reader read it. I don't know that a voice assistant would know a particular brand cooking directions. Jump in if somebody has done this.
Yeah, I think you could ask for general directions, and yeah, Sherry Davis posted Directions for Me is a great website for cooking directions. That is a wonderful site. It's in the chat box. But using a voice assistant, remember it's a search engine, so you can ask for just about anything, and sometimes it's trial and error to see what will come up and what won't.
Years ago when Siri was, the only go-to at the moment, and he was asking for the cooking directions to make frozen broccoli, and Siri was sending him to the local cooking school. So that really wasn't what he wanted. He wanted to be able to make the frozen broccoli himself. So, with the advent and invention and progression of technology, we could use OCR, Be My Eyes. I mean, there's so many more options now.
Right. Yeah,
but
and
just
someone in the chat said that. Sorry, Diane. Someone in the chat said that they looked it up, and remember it's a search engine too, so you can just ask any question you want to ask. Sometimes you might have to rephrase how you ask the question to try to get better results. And someone also asked, can we do the same thing on an Android or iOS or computer if we're using these same voice assistants on those devices?
Absolutely. It's how and what you ask, how you phrase it, practice. When I'm teaching cooking skills to my participants, some of the, I work with a lot of seniors, and they were famous for cooking, and now with their vision problem, they're really reluctant to cook. And I remind them that pretty much everybody can cook if they can read, and visually and blind people do it a little differently. So the key component in I just had a notice that my internet is sketchy. Rachel, next slide.
Yeah, you cut out there for one moment. Can you repeat what you just said? And we're going to pause on questions.
I was just saying.
We're going to pause on questions for just a moment, but we will come back to them.
I love the energy and enthusiasm, and hopefully we'll get to all of your questions. I was saying that if you don't have the comprehension of reading the recipe, then you can ask your voice assistant. So let's see. Where was it going to go? Hey, Google, what is a slivered almond?
On the website cooksinfo.com, they say, slivered almonds are almonds that have been sliced very thinly into little sticks. They differ from sliced almonds, which are almonds sliced across their diameter, giving you much bigger pieces.
Okay, so the slide shows a picture of slivered almonds. No, those are not French fries. But a few minutes ago, maybe when I cut out, cooking involves reading. If you can read, you can cook. And visually impaired and blind participants just read differently. And whether it's audio reading or braille reading or large print, the issue is comprehension. So if they don't know what an ingredient is, then they need to find out what it is. They doesn't mean they can't make the recipe or follow the recipe. They just need to know what the words are. So with that, I'm going to say, Alexa, what is a slivered almond?
Slivered almonds are a food which last in the fridge for about up to 8 months and whose subcategory is nut.
Okay, so they didn't give me a very good description of what a slivered almond is and why it's different from other almonds, but just notice how the two devices did answer the question, but so differently. Next slide. All right, here's where you can have so much fun with your device, your voice assistant. You can ask it questions as they come up. I was watching the live concert a few weeks ago, and I asked, how old is Andrea Bocelli? And immediately it told me he was 61 years old, or is 61 years old. And what is 60% of 35? Or how far is Flagstaff from Phoenix if you're planning a trip and you don't know if you can go to both sites in one day? Or how many cups are in 9 quarts? You know, that brownie recipe was giving us some really odd measurements, so you could kind of put it in terms we're more used to. How do you spell receipt? I think I misspell that every time. I have a mental block on that. So just think about how your students could use this, you know, for their essays or their, you know, their material, that they can spell things correctly with their voice assistant. Next slide. And then there's games and trivia. And we can have so much fun with this. You can ask your devices to play different games. I'll try. Hey Google, what happened today in history?
April 23rd is the observed birthday of playwright William Shakespeare, whose plays and poems transformed the English language, according to Wikipedia. Among many other words he coined, we have Shakespeare to thank for bedazzle, swagger, and multitudinous.
Multitudinous, okay, I use that all the time. Alexa, what happened today in history?
On April 23rd, 1635, the first public school in the United States, Boston Latin School, is founded in Boston.
Okay, so same question, totally different answers. And then there's other games you can play, activity games. At the Lighthouse in the summertime, we often have camp for our participants, and one of their favorite things to do is to play freeze dance. If you ask your device to play freeze dance, it's going to pull up like a Pandora playlist. So you might not want that in the school. So instead, we say, Alexa, let's play a game. Alexa, let's play a game. I guess she doesn't want to play.
Okay, let's find you a game to play. Do you want to try question of the day? It is one of the most used skills this week.
Let's play freeze dance.
Okay, I have freeze dance. Freeze dance is bound to bring out laughter, and the silliest dance moves for hours of endless fun. Do you want to try it?
Absolutely.
Gotcha! Here's freeze dance.
Okay, everybody. You've been sitting too long.
Welcome back. Are you ready to have a wicked time in Alphabet City?
Yes.
Let's pretend we've been transported.
She heard you talk, that's why she switched.
Everybody better be dancing. Don't make me do this myself. Okay, I don't know why it didn't freeze. Alexa, stop. Okay. So,
say yes or no.
No. I don't know where she went with that. It worked.
Hooray! Let's keep up the good work. L is for lamb, the cute and fluffy animals. For this next song, invent the lamb dance.
Okay, the lamb dance. Alexa, stop. We're having too much fun.
That was fun. Let's play again tomorrow.
That's a deal. All right, to wrap things up, I wanted to talk to all the fabulous instructors in the audience and people who are curious about this next skill. It's actually creating your own skill. Amazon Alexa has something called Blueprints. It's Blueprints, BLUEPRINTS Amazon.com, and the link is in the handout. And what it'll do is it'll have some templates for you to create your own skill. You could make virtual flashcards, you could make study guides. It's only limited by your own creativity and imagination. I could see this as a really helpful tool, a real fun way to get kids to study stuff, you know, things they have to memorize or whatever. I had a participant, not a child, an older woman who built a skill to help her house guests to find the beach towels, or to you know, how to run the dishwasher, or you know, whatever odd things were going on in the house. In case she wasn't there to answer their questions, they could just ask the voice assistant. So I think we're going to go on and address some of your questions.
I think
Rachel,
before I'm going to go ahead, we're going to address the questions, I think, at the end, just for the sake of time. I'm gonna go through the next slides. I don't want to go in depth into any of these, but I'm just going to talk briefly about some of the dictation features, because I think that ties into what Diane's talking about. Even though dictation is a little different because you're usually in a word processor or a place where you're typing text. I just want to go through this, and then we'll hopefully have plenty of time to address questions. The session's scheduled to go to 11:30, so it's a couple minutes before 11, but we also have a half hour, as Andrea said at the beginning, for open forum, so we have a little bit of wiggle time to make sure we have time to go over your questions. I know I've been watching the chat, and there's some great discussion going on and some really excellent suggestions. I can't remember who it was. Someone in the chat mentioned that there's a way with Alexa to enable an audio chirp or sound, so that you have an audible sound to let you know when Alexa's listening versus when it's not. So that's a good accessibility feature that's built in. So some of the built-in dictation features, and also voice assistant features for the different operating systems. So these are the built-in options. So we have Siri and dictation would be built into any iOS device. So iPod, iPad, iPod Touch, which really is the only iPod available at this moment anyway. But an iPod Touch, I actually have one here. I know you probably can't see it too well, but it's about the size. It looks just like an iPhone, and it really does everything other than it has the regular call features, but I can use it as a phone. And it has Siri, and I also have dictation anywhere I'm typing. Also macOS, which would be the Apple computer operating system, that also has these features built in. For Google devices, so you have dictation and OK Google, which is really now called the voice assistant for Android devices. And there's other apps that you could use on Android devices as well as iOS, but with Android, because it's open source, you have a little more flexibility for some of the different options. And then because of the open nature of Android, sometimes you have specific voice assistants that are unique to that manufacturer as well. With Chrome operating system, we have OK Google, which again, the new voice assistant, which they've added some really impressive features into that. I have some keyboard commands in here. I'm not expecting anyone to memorize these, but they're here as a reference. I'm hoping you use that to be able to refer back to this. But it's search with the letter D to start or stop dictation. And you do have to enable that first in accessibility settings. One of the issues with that command, if you're using Chromevox, which is the built-in screen reader, I know initially when we had this scheduled, I had 20, actually I think they were going to send us closer to 40 demo units. I'm hoping, Andrea, we could schedule that at another time. We were going to have you get your hands on Chromebooks to try out Chromebooks and Chromevox. So hopefully once this is all over, we'll be able to go back and do that. If you have Chromevox running, which is the built-in screen reader, there is a pass-through command you have to do first, because search with D is a Chromevox command, which is the screen reader. So you have to do 2 steps. I am talking to them, and I'm hoping that they fix that so they could eliminate and make search with D, or do some other command that's just one command to start and stop dictation. With Windows 10, you have Cortana. which you can enable and disable. Windows speech recognition, which again, free, built in. That's a trained system, so you could train it. It gets better the more you use it. And of course, there's also just a simple dictation. If I believe I'm sharing my whole screen here, we'll see if this works. But if I do Windows H, you should see that at the top. I don't know if you heard that little chirp, and I probably just stopped sharing, but let me get back to where we were. Okay. But it's Windows H for Windows 10. That's the dictation feature, and I still have it running there. Let me close out of that. I'm not going to demonstrate this now, but it's basically Windows H to start, Windows H to stop it. If you're on, I know some school districts, you would have to have your IT department enable that if they have certain features blocked, but that is a very simple accessibility feature that is built in and could really be incredibly useful to probably a number of your students and also older adults who are using Windows 10 computers. Free, built in, you don't have to install anything, but you may have to enable it if it's disabled. Windows 10 dictation, I have a link here. So if you want to learn more about using dictation to talk instead of typing on your PC, and often, you could use these features together, but if you have students who would benefit from dictation technology, really whatever operating system they have some option available for dictation and often more advanced voice recognition. I mentioned Windows H to turn it on or off, and you could also say stop dictation. The voice command, just say stop dictation to stop that. Dictation tips, and this is important. It's also important, as you noticed with Alexa, there was a point where Diane was doing that freeze game, and then she started talking to us, and it heard her and it switched to a different game. So you want to make sure that you kind of have to make sure that you're pausing the voice when you're talking to other people. If she was actually doing that freeze dance with a room full of kids, yeah, they probably would have been making noise, but she probably would have just been laughing and enjoying them having fun with the freeze dance rather than having a conversation. So with that, just keep in mind, it's the same thing with dictation. You want to make sure you're speaking clearly and in short, succinct phrases. You want to make sure you're enunciating. If it doesn't get what if it doesn't type what you said correctly, you could go back and fix it. With most of the built-in dictation features and screen readers now, they typically will work pretty well together. If you don't hear the screen reader read it back, you could always do keyboard commands, which we'll go over in the next section, to go back and listen to what it typed just to make sure that it's correct. And you want to make sure with dictation, if you're dictating text or an email or a text message or anything in a document or edit field, use punctuation in your sentences so that it puts commas, periods, exclamation marks, any of those in the right place. And you want to say the name of the punctuation symbol at the end of the sentence. So I would say at the end of the sentence, period. For example, what time is it? Question mark. You also want to make sure if there's a punctuation symbol, I don't want to say question mark because it probably would just type that out. You want to say it as one phrase together. Windows speech recognition is also free and built in. It works quite well. Dragon, naturally speaking, would be another option if someone needs something more comprehensive, but Windows speech recognition is often enough for many students needing to use this technology, and it is free. It's a good way, even if they're going to progress to using Dragon or something more advanced, they could always start with the built-in feature to see how it works and get used to using the technology. You could do Windows Control with S. That's a hotkey to enable Windows speech recognition. You could also go under the start menu and just type Windows speech recognition and it will come up. The voice command, you could say start listening and then do commands. When I'm teaching these technologies, you want to make sure if you're not talking to the computer, you say stop listening. So it's not if you're pausing and talking to someone else, if someone else comes in the room or you're having a conversation, or even if you're on the phone, or if you're mumbling to yourself, which I often do when I'm typing, you just want to say stop listening. So it's not getting that extra speech. And a great tool, and I don't know if Diane mentioned this, but this is a good voice command. You could say something along this line with many of the different voice assistants or speech recognition options. You can just say, what can I say? And most of these devices, whether it's Siri or voice assistant, OK Google, or Apple, right? All of these options, if you say, what can I say? It usually will come back and give you some of the common options that you could say. With Windows speech recognition, if you say, what can I say? It typically will come up with a list of options based on where your focus is. So it's a little more specific. And I have a link here. So if anyone wants to learn more about Windows speech recognition that is more advanced than the other technologies we're talking about, there's a link that goes over some of the WSR, the Windows speech recognition commands. So dictation on Mac computers, there's a link again, so you could use that. It's a great tutorial for learning to use your voice to enter text on your macOS computer. Dictation must be enabled, and it's in keyboard settings under dictation. So you want to go to your system preferences, make sure you go to dictation under keyboard settings. And then from there, you can enable enhanced dictation to perform voice commands. So not only and actually, you could also do voice assist, which is a new feature. So you could control the entire computer, and you could also do the same thing on iOS devices. The function key twice by default will start or stop dictation. You can change that to hitting the command key twice. It's a personal preference. So I usually set it, I believe, to the command key, but it really depends on the student and what works best for them and which key is going to be easiest for them to hit. And you want to make sure it doesn't conflict with another command that you set for them. There's another link here to learn about dictation commands, and you can create custom voice commands. So kind of like the blueprints, but a little simpler here. You could just create voice commands to do certain functions on Mac and iOS devices. So Siri on macOS, you could change the Siri preferences on macOS. Under System Preferences, you would go to Siri, and then you want to make sure Siri is enabled if it's not already so that the student can use it. And then you also want to enable the keyboard shortcut, and I typically set that to Command with space for Mac computers. Actually, I take that back. It's set to Command space by default. And the reason why I do change this is that is the command to get to the Spotlight search. And I like using that Spotlight search because it's a great way to quickly search for anything on the computer. So I do recommend changing that to function with space, and that avoids the conflict with Spotlight search. And another link here to if you're interested in learning a bit more about using Siri on Mac OS. Here's where we're getting a little more complicated, but when you're using Windows speech recognition or Dragon on a Windows computer, there's no bridge that I'm aware of for Mac or other operating systems. But when you're using either Windows speech recognition or Dragon naturally speaking on a Windows computer with a screen reader, with both NVDA and JAWS, there's bridge technologies to make these two, the screen reader and the voice recognition program, talk to each other. So if you have a student who truly needs full voice control on a Windows computer and they also use a screen reader, there's some different options on Windows. Voice training would be needed for these advanced programs. They would need to train it to recognize their voice for either Dragon or Windows speech recognition. JSay is an option that works with Dragon and JAWS. And then we have JDictate, which is a very basic version of JSay, more for just using dictation features with Dragon naturally speaking. So if someone doesn't need to control the entire Windows computer with JAWS with voice commands, but they just want to dictate, then JDictate would be a much less expensive option. And Dictation Bridge is free, and that works with either Dragon or Windows speech recognition and either JAWS or NVDA screen readers. So this is a great option. I've had several students use it. It does work well. You know, it's not perfect. Sometimes there's glitches. They've been pretty responsive when we've had issues with some of the installation processes. They fixed some of that, and it's a great team of volunteers that work on that project. So there's a link here if you're interested in learning more about Dictation Bridge. And again, it is free and it does work well. There is a lot of setup and the use of this when you're using these technologies together. You have probably triple the troubleshooting issues you're going to have with just a screen reader by itself, because you're having two pretty intense programs running, the speech recognition and the screen reader. And then on top of that, you have a bridge technology that's making them talk to each other. So when you voice a command, the screen reader will give that voice input and respond, or you could use the voice commands to control the screen reader. So it's much more technical than just using the screen reader. But if you have students who would not be able to use a computer without this, it's an excellent option. I have a little bit more information here about Dictation Bridge. So there's a link here, Dictation Bridge information and download links. Another link that says get that dictation going. These are all tutorials you could explore on your own. That is not a reading assignment. We'll call that a reading assignment if you're interested in learning more. Dictation Bridge also works with Windows 8, 8.1, or 10. I do recommend Windows 10 just because there's so many improvements in the Windows speech recognition on Windows 10 compared to Windows 8 and 8.1. And you would want to make sure you're using either NVDA or JAWS. And if you have NVDA and Windows speech recognition and Dictation Bridge, you have a completely free software solution. The challenge is you do want to make sure that your computer has strong enough specs to support all of that technology running. So you do need a pretty powerful computer for all of this technology to work well. I have a student that I'm working with now who has a computer from Computers for the Blind, and he's lucky that he was able to get that, but it's not working great. He's using Dictation Bridge with Windows speech recognition and NVDA. We have a lot of technical issues. He's very patient in dealing with those, and he can't afford a new computer. So he understands that that's the limits of what he's working with. And it does work, but we have to reboot that system quite often. So just keep that in mind. If they have the money to put into anything, I would get a computer with at least 16 gigs of RAM and definitely an i7 processor with that's at least 8th generation or newer. You want to make sure that the processor is at least 3 gigahertz or higher than that even, but you want to make sure that it's really going to support the technology. External noise canceling microphone is recommended, and that's whether you're using Dictation or even the voice assistants. It will, if someone's using these technologies frequently, the headset I'm using is under $30. It's an MPOW. Is the manufacturer. I think it's MPOW 071. Diane, I think this might be the one that you got. There's another one that I really like that's Logitech H390. It's an older model. There are newer ones, and that one also is just under $30. It's a little hard to find them now because more people are using video conferencing. So I've noticed that some of these are out of stock, but so just keep that in mind. You want to have a good, doesn't mean that they have to spend a lot of money on a headset, but they do want a good noise canceling headset. And some voice recognition tips. It does take time to set up and train when you're using Windows speech recognition or Dragon naturally speaking, because you are doing that voice training. The microphone settings often will need to be adjusted. So these are just configuration settings that would need to go in to the setup at the beginning to make sure that, not only, the positioning is one thing that you could teach to make sure that they know where to have the microphone when they're using these technologies, but then the internal settings on the computer really need to be set optimally. And some examples of when this technology would be beneficial, if there's a student who has learning disabilities as well as vision loss. If a student is not physically able to type with all 10 fingers, this could be a great option. If they are able to type even with one finger, I still recommend that they learn to do that, even if it's a backup, because the more options they have, the less frustrated they're going to be. If the voice recognition isn't working for a specific command, if they have an option, even if slower, of using their one finger or two fingers to type on a keyboard, that's at least giving them a backup to reduce that frustration. If a student has Parkinson's disease or any other disease, or if they have tremors or any reason why they would have difficulty typing on a keyboard, again, you could also look at other ergonomic keyboards or other solutions, one-handed keyboards. There's many options. So you could look at options, even if they're using voice recognition. Don't rule out having some keyboard as a backup, or some mouse, or both, or even a touch screen or a touchpad. And with that, we're open for questions. I hope that was helpful, and Diane's available for any questions as well.
All right, thank you so much, Rachel and Diane. That was awesome. We do have some questions from, let's see, Elisa had asked, and Carrie I think may have answered, but just in case. Elisa asked, is there an option to lengthen the time the voice assistants listen before stopping? For example, sometimes when she's asking and thinking, she runs out of time for what she wanted to say.
I'm looking it up because I'm not sure.
Oh, well,
I'm looking up voice assistant timeout. If you're not sure, look it up. Let's see, voice assistant settings. Let's see. Timeout, no speech, stop voice access after 30 seconds, activate lock screen. It looks like there might be a timeout. I've never tried to do that, but it looks like there might be some options and settings. Sometimes you have to explore or just do a search. I think I'm sharing my whole screen, right?
Yep. And Carrie had, oh, sorry, Carrie responded.
I was just going to say, search engines are your best friend when you need to look stuff up.
Absolutely agreed. Carrie did respond to that, Elisa. I'm not sure if you saw it. It says, I'm not sure if you can extend the time, but I know on the Alexa, at least you can turn on the follow-up mode where she continues to listen to you after she answers the first time. So that might be something to look into. We had a Chromebox workshop would be wonderful. So
yes,
maybe on the books for next year.
Yeah, and we did have that scheduled, and I didn't want to be, I really felt with the Chromebook and Chromebox that I would just be talking theoretically to you about how to use it. And I really wanted you to have that hands-on experience. And I know most of you don't have a Chromebox. So if I knew we were signing you up and everyone had a Chromebox, we could have done that virtually. But because I think most probably don't, or a number of you probably don't have it, it's something that I would want to do in face-to-face only for that reason.
Another question was, does dictation work in other languages?
Yes, Diane.
Yes.
And
you could get pretty fancy with languages. I don't want to get too technical, but not only dictation and voice input. With some of the technologies, you're probably going to have to change your entire computer language. So with Windows, I have mine set where if I do Windows space right now, I don't know, can you see that on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so on the screen, I have a little box that popped up that I'm focused on English. If I hit Windows space again, I went to German. And then if I do it again, it's switching to French. I have students who use various operating systems. Oh, let me make sure I'm going back to English, or when I type, weird things will happen because it not only changes your QWERTY keyboard, it changes the command keys. You got to be really careful. I'm often in the middle of something and I switch, and my A is not an A. So Braille, when you're using different languages. Now, what I just did there is actually just the keyboard input, but I could change the whole operating system language as well. On Windows, you could do the same on Mac, and most operating systems, you have other options. And then if you have a refreshable Braille display, you could also change the language on a Braille Note Touch, for example, Braille Note Touch Plus. You could go in and change the language, and there's commands that you could use. I think it's Enter L. I'm pretty sure it's Enter L to switch the language. If that doesn't work, let me know. I'm pretty sure that's it. I have it in a different presentation. So that you have to set it up first, but once it's set up, then you could just switch back and forth between your primary and secondary language.
Super, thank you. Tiffany Stafford would like to know, have you tried using dictation with narrator?
Yes, I actually have. It works pretty well. I could minimize here and let's see if, am I sharing sound? Do you hear the click?
I did hear sound earlier.
You did?
When you did the
yeah,
not hearing sound there.
Yeah, so I'll turn on
the narrator dialog.
I did Control Windows Enter to turn on narrator, and
narrator heading level 1.
So if I were to do, I'm going to go to Word.
Start window R W D.
I know I'm
Pane.
going pretty quick. I'm just getting to Word here.
Document
Now,
1.
if I do a Windows H to start dictation,
H.
this is a test, period.
Test.
If this were not a test, comma, I wouldn't say it was, period. Stop dictation.
H.
Now, it didn't say it back, but what I could do is just
Cap T. Is a test, period. If this were not a test, cap, advanced proofing issue, and advanced,
oh,
it,
it's given me some
and
errors.
was, this is a test. If this were not a test, I advanced proofing issue, wouldn't end advanced proofing issue, say it was.
It doesn't like the word wouldn't. It doesn't like that contraction there. So it didn't say it back, but I'm able to, once I dictate something, I'm able to just quickly use keyboard commands to go back. Not the most ideal. I would rather it just say it back to me, but you could absolutely use them together. Let's turn off.
Exiting narrator.
Okay. Lisa McGarity would like to know, do you know of any voice dictation programs that work with students with speech difficulties? Tried Dragon with a student, but like Siri and Alexa, it could not understand him.
Yeah, so sometimes you have to go through, you might have to adjust the microphone settings. You may have to go through the voice training numerous times. It really comes down to the difficulty they have voicing and speaking. If it's not understanding, you may need some other alternative. There's many different options that would replace a standard keyboard and mouse. So perhaps either some switch technology, or if they're able to use something like a Big Keys keyboard with a touch screen, there's a number of different options. It also will vary whether they have low vision and are able to use magnification software versus whether they need screen reading software. There is Smiley Mouse. I did very briefly, he actually sent me a trial. I think you were with me, Diane. He did send me a trial of it. I haven't tested it, but when I was at ATIA in January, I said, can I just sit down? And he said, sure, try it out. So I turned on magnification and it did work quite well. You have to have vision to use Smiley Mouse because it's based on where you're looking at the screen, and then you could smile or do certain gestures. I believe it's smile for a certain amount of time. I forget what the commands are, but it's basically using your face. You don't have to have anything on your face. There's no control. It's basically lines up to where your eyes are. So if there's someone that is able to use screen magnification, that could be an option. I'm only throwing that out there as one potential. I haven't done thorough testing on that, but switches or other alternate keyboards may be a better option than voice recognition if someone's is just having trouble getting that voice recognition to work. But before you do that, there's things you could do with the settings, and I would go through as many voice trainings as possible. Just keep doing the voice trainings, and also the correction at the beginning. You want to start slow and see if they could just say a few phrases. If it misunderstands them, try correcting some words, and then just keep going with that and having them say those same words. See if you get some good progression, and then you're able to, see if it's something that would work. I hope that helps.
Great. We had someone say they didn't hear narrator, but I could hear it. I don't know. I'm not quite sure what happened there.
Start
yes.
narrator dialog.
Can you all
OK.
hear?
Button.
Can you all hear it now?
Taskbar. Volume control window. Volume. Narrator dialog.
That should be pretty loud.
Okay. Okay. They can hear it. I'm not sure what happened previously.
Yeah.
Cool.
Narrator heading level 1. Exiting narrator.
Okay. Yes, this will be recorded. We'll get the recordings on our website next week. And we just wanted people to have access to the PowerPoint slides ahead of time in case they wanted to review the information ahead of time. So if you guys have any more questions, feel free to raise your hand, type in the chat box. If there are no more questions, we can move on to the raffle, or maybe the closing code. one of those. Any more questions? Good, I'm glad you guys could hear it. Super. This has been really helpful. That's great. Yeah, I learned a lot too. Thank you guys so much for sharing. I do not have a very smart house, so I don't have any. Well, I have my phone, my iPhone. Of course, I've used Siri several times,
Yeah.
but
and you don't have to have a standalone voice assistant to use it. If you have a smart device, whether it's a tablet or a phone or an iPod, then you have a voice assistant that you could use, and that those will tie into any smart home devices.
Yeah, absolutely. Super. Well, thank you guys so much. That was really, really great. If you want to move on to the next.
There was a
Oh, sorry.
question, can use pre-recorded switches to dictate commands. So it sounds like, Kathy, you may be getting into AAC, an augmented and alternative communication. Yes. Okay. So that's a whole different world when you're looking at AAC devices, even though it's using a lot of the technologies that we're looking at together. And there are a number of AAC devices that would be accessible for students with vision loss. You would really want a customized assessment. I highly recommend working alongside with you if you're a TVI, making sure you have a TVI on that team, a speech pathologist, ideally a speech pathologist who's familiar with AAC technologies, and even further, ideally someone who's familiar with those AAC devices that are accessible for a student with vision loss. If not, get an AT person on that team, preferably a caddis if you can, so that you could just get all those professionals working together and make sure you get a good option and try out some different devices before you make any purchases. There's apps that you can install on different smart devices as well, and that might be a good fit for your student. Yeah, Kathy said, I work with students with significant cognitive disabilities who are also visually impaired. Yes, I work closely with them. I have students with so many different physical. Yeah. So you just want to make sure you have the right people on the team. And anytime you're dealing with AAC, because of the speech involved, and it's not just teaching the technology, it's really making sure that you have the right phrases and helping the student ideally to be able to progress to more advanced phrases. And they might start off with something simple with just a picture that says, I'm hungry. But ideally, you would want them working, if possible, to sentences and being able to have phrases.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right.
Great. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah.
We're both glad to hear that.
Jinx. You owe me a soda when I can see you again.
Here you go.
All right, great. Fantastic, Mia. Thanks for being here. Well, thanks so much, guys, for joining us. If you want to advance the slide, Rachel.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. So we're not done. We have the open forum.
Great. Yeah. But I do want to get a reminder about evaluations. Remember, FIMC is providing those. You can use this QR code to grab that survey, and the closing code for today is Google. So Google and Amazon both made appearances today. So they were part of our opening and closing codes. So be sure to have those when you complete the survey. Even if you're not looking for in-service points, we use this information to support our project to the Florida Department of Education. So any feedback you all give is important, even if you're not looking for CEUs. So please fill it out regardless. We really appreciate the feedback. And now the moment you all have been waiting for, before we pause for a quick break, is our raffle. If you want to go to the next slide. Oh, just a reminder, sorry, just kidding. Upcoming sessions, registration is still open for all of these. So later today at 1:30, you can join us to learn more about screen readers and keyboard commands on Windows computers. So if you haven't registered and you want to attend, please go ahead. In tomorrow's sessions, we have the built-in accessibility features, we have a virtual water cooler, and an app extension Smackdown. So bring your apps and ideas and come share out for an interactive session at the end of the day tomorrow to close our Working with the Techsperts. But yes, these are all open and available for registration. Next slide.
And I know you said it, but I just want to reiterate. So if you haven't registered for the next session, just be sure that you go in and register for those, because they're each unique rooms that you have to have that separate Zoom link for.
Yes, that is correct. Thank you. All right, raffle time. Sherry, are you ready? So Rachel is going, so some items we have for raffles. Those of you that have never been to one of our workshops before, we always bring prizes. And unfortunately, we usually have, raffle tickets, and you can put in a bucket for what you want. The way we're gonna do this now, because we still wanted to have some fun and give you an opportunity to get some cool stuff. We have Bluetooth headphones, power banks, National Braille Press book, technology books like an iOS 13 gesture reference card in Braille. We have a compendium of JAWS shortcuts. We have all kinds of stuff available. And what is going to happen is Rachel is going to choose a number between 1 and whatever Sherry tells us.
Diane will.
Diane will choose. Diane, oh yeah, there it is right there on the screen for me. Sorry, Diane. So you're going to choose a number between 1 and, I'm assuming, probably 108 or something like that, or
131.
Woo! So a number between, 3 numbers between 131 for our winners.
All
so
right, the first winning number is 23.
23 is Krista Bulger.
Are you here, Krista?
Krista Bulger.
Krista Liebler's here. Christina Liebler, no Krista Boulder. She must have left. Okay, different number.
There are some phone numbers. So if Krista Bulger is here, maybe just go into the chat.
You are automatically entered into the raffle just by being here.
Okay, I think we should go on.
Yep, next number.
Next number will be 57.
Number 57 is Tiffany Stevens, and I know she's here.
Yay, Tiffany.
Super, fantastic. She is here, super, super.
So you're going to send it to her in the chat, right?
So we're going to, you're going to receive an email from Colleen with a list of the items. You're going to write what your choice is and give her your mailing address, and we will send it to you.
Kay has a great idea, Diane. Can you have Alexa pick a number?
Oh, yes, great idea. Oh, I love it. Alexa, pick a number between 1 and 131.
Your random number between 1 and 131 is 55.
55.
55. 55 is Alicia Garrett.
She's here.
Yay, you're a winner. So look out for an email from Colleen. It's coming your way. All right, so that was 2 winners, one more number.
Alexa, pick a number between 1 and 131.
Your random number between 1 and 131 is 3.
3.
3.
Melanie Malone.
Ooh, Melanie, are you here? I saw you earlier. Did you leave?
She raised her hand. And there looks like Jeffrey Kazusko also has a hand raised.
Jeffrey, do you have a question? Yay, Melanie, you're a winner too. Look out for an email from Colleen.
Yay.
Okay, Jeffrey said no question.
Okay. Super duper. All right, guys, thank you so much. Yeah, Sue says, way to go, random winners. We used randomize.org. So we put all your names into this website and it just shuffles them all around. So that's how we're determining who's the winner. So if you guys want to continue to talk, we can do so, but let's take a quick break. Diane's like, yes,
do you
please.
want to, can we unmute, is it only unmuting one person at a time or? Yeah,
yes.
Okay. So maybe just use the chat to talk and then we'll come back and if you raise your hand when we come back, we could always unmute one at a time for the open forum.
Yep. Okay, I'm gonna put down these hands that are up. So now, there we go. All right, so take a quick break. We'll come back here in about 5 minutes or so. And so just stay tuned and we'll come back and chat some more and connect some more and talk about any successes or issues you're having. Thank you, and I'm gonna stop recording.
Okay, so about 11:40.